Okay,
Please introduce yourselves.
we will. I assume first for technical purposes that we are in Indiana, is that correct? Okay, good. How's the weather? I am Dr. Michael Anderson. I am in my 16th year of doing the national finals. I am a Minnesotan by nature, or by not by birth, but certainly by nature. And I live way up north near Canada, live on a big lake. I'm a retired professor and a retired college administrator. Molly?
My name is Molly Russell. I'm an attorney with Legal Aid of West Virginia, and I specialize in domestic violence law. This is my first time judging the Nationals.
Ed?
And I'm Ed Philpott. I'm a trial lawyer. My practice is in central New Hampshire. My office is in central New Hampshire. My practice is in New Hampshire. I live near a pretty big lake and probably just a little bit further away from Canada than Dr. Anderson does.
Maybe this far.
Maybe this far.
All right, would you please introduce yourselves and your teacher?
Hello, we are the seniors of Unit 4 from Team Indiana. My name is Kyle Bragg, and I look forward to attending the University of Florida to study economics and statistics.
Nice.
My name is Max Anderson, and I plan on attending Indiana University to double major in business management and political science.
My name is Bradley Kelly. I also plan on attending Indiana University to major in political science and attain a minor in business administration.
My name is Nikhil Datar. I will be attending Harvard to study computer science and statistics. And today we are joined by our teacher, Ms. Janet Chandler.
Hi. Okay, if you're ready, we'll get started. We're doing Unit 4 and question number 2. Unit 4. How have the values and principles embodied in the Constitution shaped American institutions and practices? Question number 2. Members of Congress are not only legislators, but they, quote, are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of public officers, unquote. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Bullet 1. Explain the difference, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? How effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers? You may begin.
Representative Barbara Jordan said,
If society today allows wrongs to go unchallenged, the impression is created that those wrongs have the approval of the majority.
Max and I believe Congress's investigatory power has been ineffective. The first congressional investigation was in 1792 into General Arthur St. Clair for his military defeat at the hand of Native Americans. The investigation was inconclusive, showing ineffectiveness.
modern hearings, such as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, have been increasingly partisan, making it challenging for Congress to use hearings for pending legislation, federal programs, and pressing issues.
Bradley and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues. Congressional investigations have been effective. The Cavode Committee investigated claims of corruption in the Buchanan administration. President Buchanan survived, but the committee's effectiveness opened the door for Congress to check the executive moving forward.
The Church Committee saw both Democrats and Republicans work together to investigate illegal and unethical activities of federal agencies like the CIA. The investigation led to the inception of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, requiring warrants for surveillance.
The congressional power of oversight differs from investigation. Oversight is proactive, enabling Congress to require reporting from the bureaucracy and use legislative agencies to oversee executive actions. The investigatory power is much more reactive and allows congressional committees to make inquiries, subpoena information, and hold witnesses in contempt.
We believe the power of oversight is more significant than the power of investigation due to its proactive nature. Congressional agencies, such as the Congressional Budget Office, check the executive branch. The CBO was established in 1974 to diffuse tensions with President Nixon, ensuring the executive branch does not interfere with the congressional power of the purse.
Additionally, executive agencies submit congressionally mandated reports. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2019 required the Secretary of the Navy to submit reports if they intended to utilize a provisional waiver to extend a naval vessel's deployment period. These energetic measures prevent offenses from occurring.
Conversely, congressional investigations are reactive. Following the Iran-Contra affair, congressional committees indicted several officials, including Secretary of Defense Weinberger. However, the illegal funding of Nicaraguan Contras had already occurred. The ability of congressional oversight to check the bureaucracy makes it more significant than the investigatory power.
Kyle and I believe Congress has been effective in its use of oversight powers, given their broad interpretation. Article 1, Section 1 states all legislative powers are vested in a Congress of the United States. This vagueness enables Congress to institute its own understanding of oversight powers.
Congressional effectiveness was brought to the forefront during the Teapot Dome scandal of 1922. This was the first instance where a member of the executive cabinet was tried and convicted following an investigation into the leasing of United States petroleum reserves to private companies.
Subsequently, McGrain v. Daugherty solidified the understanding that congressional investigations have legislative purpose with the necessary and proper clause. Today, Congress effectively used oversight to check President Trump following the Capitol insurrection.
Alex and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues regarding effective use of oversight powers due to the partisan impact on congressional efficiency. The Brookings Research Institute found oversight scrutiny is significantly higher when different parties control the two branches.
Congressman Bob Barr emphasized the need for clarification, regardless of perceived effectiveness, stating,
"It's high time for some congressional oversight backbone." This concludes our prepared testimony, and we are ready for follow-up questioning.
So I have one kind of from the get-go, in that you said oversight is proactive and investigation is reactive. And what do you say to the statement that perhaps it's a chicken or the egg scenario? Because how do you know what to oversee if not for investigation? Thoughts on that?
one way in which oversight is proactive is kind of how Congress is able to delegate and manage their agencies. And this can often be seen through the legislation of Chevron deference, where Congress is actually able to ensure that the executive agencies are doing what their statutes intend them to do. And this is kind of why these are different.
So it sounds like you're in disagreement. I want to be sure that I understand what you're saying. So let's have some examples of what you think a successful investigation or oversight process. How do we know by the results?
It would be effective in the sense that it comes to a result, identifying that a legislation needs to be made and passed, or that a federal program needs to be revised in some way, and that would be a use or show of an effective use.
Can you give me an example of one of those that's been effective, where there was a real result?
Yes, in 2019, there was an investigation into generic drug manufacturing companies that Congress had done. And that actually had a tangible result. That was the CREATES Act of 2019 was passed, which was aimed at targeting and reducing inflated prices that these drug manufacturing companies were targeting. And that was successful, not only because federal legislation was passed, but it was an issue that was very bipartisan in nature. And it had approval from both Republican and Democrat senators. And so for that reason, it was a tangible result that occurred.
So can they ever come to a result that doesn't have any action suggested? Is that also successful?
I think one of the biggest instances where there was not a formal impeachment inquiry, for example, against President Nixon was an example where we saw that effective use of the investigatory power despite a lack of an impeachment trial, because President Nixon, due to the fallout from the result of the televised and very public involving media nature of the investigation, was forced to resign. So even though he was not charged, we did able to see the effective use of the investigatory power.
Is there an occasion, however, where an investigation is successful but doesn't find any problems?
I've not been able to find any sort of investigation that resulted in no problems. However, I do know that during following the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center, the Congress initiated a 9/11 commission that was able to look into it and identified some abilities that needed to be looked at in the future.
I would also argue that standing commissions such as the Ethics Committee are sort of able to ensure that should these hearings be done, if nothing is wrong, they are at least able to properly oversight and provide proper investigations for many situations.
So then it's not necessary that a particular outcome result from an investigation or an oversight hearing. Is that what you're saying?
I would argue that it does not necessarily need to come to a result. A lot of this sort of questioning or issue comes from the fact that the founders did not discreetly or directly define what an investigatory power or what the investigatory power should be in the Constitution, which kind of makes its interpretation broad.
I think the Army McCarthy hearings demonstrated the ability of a congressional investigation to have effectiveness well beyond the scope of what the investigation was designed to see. The televised hearings that showed Senator McCarthy being abrasive during his investigation into communist allegations with the State Department and the increased public presence in the media proceedings as a result shows that the tangible result doesn't ultimately determine how effective a congressional investigation was.
We have to understand the actual purpose of these congressional investigations. Kilbourne v. Thompson actually showed that the purpose of a congressional investigation was to enforce the vesting clause. That is, Congress hasn't, that these investigations do have and do support a legislative purpose that Congress is actually wanting to commit. So if there is a piece of federal legislation, then it clearly supports that. But if there isn't a piece of legislation that's passed, then there does need to be at least some clear purpose of legislative authority that is being demonstrated by Congress in order to say that that investigation was successful.
Do you think the investigation into the Ukrainian phone calls of President Trump was a successful investigation?
I believe that in some extent it was a successful investigation in the sense that it was more than likely aimed to be more political than it was more of a legal sense. It was more of an idea of discrediting the president, making some approvals dip down so that impeachment would be more of a viable option for the Democratic Party.
I would disagree with my colleague, and I believe that politicalization and sort of this polarization around this topic actually has made these investigations much less effective. And that's why I would argue that some sort of stipulations need to occur, such as maybe the institution of a special counsel, such as in the Mueller investigation, or even possibly secret hearings done amongst our congressmen would just enable that these can be done without political motives being involved.
What changes would need to occur to make that happen?
Something with the House Rules Committee, as they are, or House Rules or Senate Rules Committee, as they are the most powerful or all-reaching committee throughout the House and the Senate, in the sense that they help identify the rules, make the rules for debating on all the things that go along in the House and the Senate in the day-to-day.
Congressional oversight and investigations are largely derived from statutory powers, not the Constitution. So they would have, such as the actions of the Inspector General Act, which is what requires a lot of the congressionally mandated reporting that was discussed in the previous testimony. So therefore, Congress would have to pass specific statutes that would pertain to the conduct of these investigations to make these changes go into effect.
So
How close to the conclusion of the investigation do you think these need to be passed? Instantaneous? How much? What do you think there should be a time limit placed on it?
I don't think that there should be a time limit placed on it, because when it comes to passing a law, we really want to make sure that it is good, that it is going to be able to last a long time. For example, the fact that when it comes down to making a law, only 5% of bills become law, because we want to make sure that all of our laws are right, they are necessary and proper, and are going to be able to help the United States in the long run.
So you brought up the Mueller report and special counsel as a remedy for some of these problems. In that particular instance, we were confronted with the idea that we might need to subpoena the president of the United States. How do you think that is something that these oversights and investigatory processes, is that their right to subpoena the president?
Yeah. In the Supreme Court case, the Eastland case, the Supreme Court did find that when the subpoena is needed for a legislative purpose, so Congress has all the information they need to pass laws, the subpoena power, I see my time has passed.
Finish your thought.
Okay.
Finish your thought.
The subpoena power can be used in that sessions to require these documents. And while there has been some ineffectiveness requiring reporting from the executive branch and its members, I do feel that Congress is within its rights to subpoena those documents.
Thank you. Time's up. Okay. Let's get some feedback. Ed, are you ready to go first?
I am. First of all, thank you. That was an enjoyable discussion. I think you answered the questions regarding the difference between oversight and investigation well. I like the proactive, reactive way that you described that. I like that you talked about the enforceability of findings of Congress through the power of purse. And I think you had some very good examples of successful and unsuccessful investigations. And I like the fact that you presented both perspectives, that you didn't have a consensus on your team as to whether or not those were effective or ineffective. And that's good, because for the purposes that we're here for today, we're about information. There's not a right answer. So being able to present those the way that you did, I think was effective. So thank you.
Molly?
I'm going to echo my colleague's sentiments. I really thought you did a great job of giving examples of good investigations, bad investigations, and being able to back up why you thought they were a certain way. I thought you all were very respectful of each other, and with this technology, being able to say, well, I disagree and I agree. I thought you all worked well collaboratively. I appreciate the fact that you brought up the Mueller investigation as an alternative, as something that we can look towards a little bit more. And that is just that's a good modern example that most people know. So appreciate using that. Overall, good job. Thank you.
Yeah, I was also impressed with the examples that you were able to bring to bear on the conversation we're having today. Court cases when necessary. There is some, I mean, for example, if your team would make it to Monday for the finals, and this question could be repeated, it's different this year. There is some framing references in Federalist 51 about this process that might be worth citing, but you had so many citations, it may just be too many. Anyway, that's where you would look. For example, when I asked you about what the results should be when you see success, you did a good job playing that back and forth. Generic drug example was an excellent, you pull that out of your head. I don't know where that came from, but way to go. And then you also had the Nixon example. And is it a positive or negative outcome that he resigned? It depends on your perspective. And then the other one was sort of searching for was Benghazi. There was a very substantial investigation into the Benghazi activities of Hillary Clinton, and the fact that they found nothing. Is that successful? I guess it is, right? It depends on how you look at it and what your political partisanship is. And the 9/11 Commission was one of your examples of why you did well. You also brought up the power of the purse. We didn't have time to get to that, but we probably would have wanted to if we had a little more time. Examples there. And Iran-Contra, that's an interesting one. It came up a lot yesterday too, but my point is that you brought a lot of examples to bear on this issue and a lot of good background to questions that are not easy to answer. Way to go. Excellent work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you all.
We'd like to congratulate the students on their effort and participation this morning. Great job. I'll end the recording.